After Effects is great for animating, but it's not always the place where you want to be doing your layouts or your actual design work. There is a workflow we can use to get work from Adobe Illustrator into After Effects, but there is some prep work that we have to do beforehand. Essentially, what we're going to do is take a look at this working file that I have, get it cleaned up and prepared so that each of the elements we may want to animate are on their own separate layers. And then we'll take a look at how to get them over into After Effects so that we can actually make things move. So this is just a working file. You'll see I have some things grouped in here just as I was working on them and putting things together. But really the first step for preparing this artwork is to make sure that anything that I want to move is in its own separate group. That way we can pull those groups into layers. So I'll just go ahead and lock my background here. I'm going to start grabbing things that go together. So for example, the body of the speaker, I'm just going to hit Control G. Throw that in a group. I'm not going to worry about naming them right now because we're actually going to name the layers. And when we convert these groups to layers, they don't retain their naming properties. And so I would just have to redo it later. Go ahead and lock these things as I'm working on them just to make selection a little bit easier. So I'll group that mid speaker together. Here's the tweeter, subwoofer down here. You can see the shadow is already on its own layer. And then I'm just going to double check that these leaves happen to already be in their own groups. I'll lock those. And then I'm just going to grab the pot here. The next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to release these each into their own separate layer. The easiest way to do that is to make sure that the parent layer is selected. Use our flyout menu, and then come down to Release to Layers Sequence, and watch what happens when I do this. So now it's converted each of those groups into layers, but they're still nested under this layer 1. To fix that, I'm just going to select all of them, and then drag them into the bottom here, and you'll see it pulls them out of that layer 1. And then I'll just delete this. I'll go ahead and rename these so that I can easily find them once I'm in After Effects. And after I have all of those named, I'm just going to go ahead and save this. I'll save this as a new file because there is one thing that you want to be mindful of. And that is you want to make sure that you have this Create PDF compatible file checked. Now, the other thing to be mindful of here is that text won't automatically convert over. You have to actually copy paste text from Illustrator into After Effects. So this method will only work for things like shapes. I'm going to hit OK here. And then I'll come over into After Effects. You can see these layers are already in here. I'll go ahead and delete this out. This was from before, just preparing this so that you can see how these look coming in. So I'll go to File, Import, File. And then this was the one that we just saved. And then you need to make sure that you are importing as composition retain layer sizes. This is important or it will come in a little bit strange. I'll hit import here, and you'll see that created a new composition with the name of that file. Once I open this up, you'll see these are each of those layers. Now, if we look under those, if there's just some very basic movement that you want to do, you can get to transform properties in here, but sometimes you want a little bit more control, especially if you're doing something like scaling. So if I blow this up, you'll start to see that this starts to pixelate. So one thing you want to make sure that you do anytime you're changing sizes of things you're pulling in is to check this box right here. And this tells After Effects to continually rasterize a vector layer. Now, if you need more control than this, you can actually get to the individual contents and properties of these layers by converting these back to shapes. So if I select all of these I'm going to go to right click, create, create shapes from vector layer. Now you can see it's essentially doubled the amount of layers that I have. So for every one of these Illustrator layers, it's created a shape layer called outlines. And then underneath that, it doesn't only have the transform controls, but it also has the contents of that shape. So for example, if I want to grab my leaf, I'll just make this large so we can see it for a second. Okay, so underneath contents here, it doesn't only have transform, but in the contents, it has the actual information for those shapes there. So it has groups 1 and 2 for the shaded half and then the full layer behind it. If I open that up, here's my path. Here's my fill, so I could go in and change things like the color of this if I wanted to, or even animate those properties. And this gives me a lot more control over what is able to be animated. So to summarize, pulling things in from Illustrator requires some planning up front, and that you want to make sure you are grouping things that you may want to animate separately, that those groups are then placed on their own layers, that it's saved as a PDF compatible file, and then you import that into After Effects.